Y'all ever wondered sometimes, like, what am I supposed to do with this? Sometimes that's situational, sometimes it's relational, but sometimes it's literally like our stuff. It can be a lot of different things. But I want to talk to you about the parable of the talents, and we're going to look at this tonight. And you're probably thinking I'm going one way, and you're going to see I'm going a completely different way, probably. Or maybe you're not thinking of anything at all. You're just excited to hear. And you're not like me when I sit down to listen to someone to preach and I try and guess where they're going. I don't know. Maybe it's a preacher thing, but I do it. So we're going to look at Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. We're going to read through 28, and then we're going to talk. Okay? Cool. So let's do it. It says this: "For it will be like a man going on a journey, who has called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another he gave 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. I'm sure if you have been in church any length of time, you've heard a message on the parable of the talents. And before we get into our points tonight, I want to make some observations. These are key observations for the story. The first observation I want you to understand is where this parable is in context of the scripture. Matthew 25, verse 1 starts with the parable of the 10 virgins. This parable is about being ready for the coming of Christ. There was 5 wise virgins who trimmed their wicks, prepared their oil, and there was 5 foolish virgins. Virgins would be another way to say it, I guess. Virgins. And they were careless with the time that they had. And they did not trim their wicks, and they did not prepare their oil. And so when the master came unexpectedly in the middle of the night, the bridegroom, they were not ready. And they had to go and get their oil. And they looked at the 5 with oil and they said, Let me have some of yours. And they said, No. Paraphrase. They said, No, we're not going to do that. Go get your own oil. And so while they were trying to find a place to gather their oil, they closed the gate and they were not able to go in. Then after the parable of the talents, which comes next after the 10 virgins, you have what is called the final judgment. And Jesus begins to tell of what will happen in the last days when he comes again. I think it's really important to understand where the parable of the talents is sandwiched in between. Getting ready and being prepared for Jesus to come like a thief in the night. And what the final judgment will look like, where he will separate the sheep and the goats, and he will say to those on his right, "Come, for I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you brought me in. I was in prison and you visited me." That's one observation. Another observation is this, that Jesus is talking about, if you look at verse 1 in Matthew 25, he is saying the kingdom of heaven is like. So he is using an earthly picture to describe what the kingdom of heaven is going to be like. And then he tells the parable of the talents. I think it's also really interesting that they were all given something. And by the way, it was a lot. Y'all ever feel bad for the guy with one? Let's be honest. You kind of feel bad with the guy with one, right? We feel bad for the guy for one because we don't understand what a talent is. A talent was not a coin, it was a measurement. It was a weight. A certain weight of money. So, if it was silver coins that the talent, the measurement that they were using, let's say it was silver, that would have been around 30,000 American dollars that they would have been given, one talent. If it was gold, it would have been $1.5 million that he would have been given. So to put in perspective, the guy who had one still had a lot more. The talent, whether silver or gold, if it was just silver, would have been 15 to 20 years' wages for the laborer, the person who day labored. So this was a lot to be entrusted with, even if he only got one. Kind of changes the story a little bit. Another observation. They each were given what they had based on their ability. I think sometimes we skip that part. They were each entrusted with a certain measure based on their ability. There's a lot in this story that we're going to look at today that I believe that God is wanting us to understand about His kingdom. And the very first thing that we have to understand if we're going to get the preface of this story is that we are stewards, not owners. Matthew 25, verse 14, he says, he called his servants and entrusted his possessions to them. His property. So there's a man going on a journey. He's going to leave all of his stuff in the care of his servants. And his servants have a responsibility to understand he's coming back and it's not mine, it's his. What if we viewed our lives like that? This won't pop up on the screen, but in Galatians 2:20, it says, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who lives, but Christ. And the life that I now live, it's Christ who lives in me. That's a paraphrase. Go look it up because I don't have the full thing memorized. But that's what the context of it is. Galatians 2:20. I've been crucified with Christ. My life is now not my own. I've been paid for. I've been bought with the sacrifice of Christ. So I am stewarding my life for the Father. Stewarding it. How am I doing? How am I stewarding my life? If the master were to come back and look and call for an account, would it look like I was the owner of my life, or I had surrendered my life and stewarded it to the King. You've been bought with a price. And it wasn't a small one. It was a big one. So, we have to understand this. Number 2 thing that we have to understand. We will give an account for what we did with what he entrusted to us. Matthew 25:19, it says this, "Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them." Can I just tell you something? As believers, we have to understand Christ is coming back, and we will give an account for what we did with what he entrusted to us. We will. Now, that could be a big, scary thing, but it's only big and scary if we're the ones owning our lives. If we've surrendered our life and we've entrusted our life to him and we're saying, listen, I want to steward it the way you want me to go, we will give an account, and he'll go, look, our works that we have, and can I just tell you that this faith in salvation does not come from our works, it comes from the finished work of the cross. That's how we get it. By grace through faith, we receive what he did for us, but then he entrusts to us the kingdom, and we are supposed to do something with the kingdom here on earth. If we think that the kingdom of heaven is there only, we've missed why Jesus came. Jesus came to release the kingdom of heaven on earth. That is why when he taught us to pray, he said, your kingdom come, your will be done where? On earth as it is in heaven. We are to release the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, and he will come back and he will settle up accounts with us who bear the name of Christ. He will. We'll give an account. So are we ready? Are we ready? What have I done with my life? How am I living? It's really, really important. Y'all ever see this text and the words and you wonder, like, okay, you got the guy with the 2 talents and the 5 talents, and they're told, well done, good and faithful servant. I just tell you, like, those are the words I want to hear from the Father. Well done, good and faithful servant. There's another set of words that we're going to look at in a minute that I never want to hear, which is, you wicked and slothful servant. I don't want to hear those words. Faithfulness is a big deal. And can I just tell you, faithfulness is more than just showing up. That's consistency. Faithfulness is about, as we will see, and this is my third point to you, is faithfulness is about what we do with what he entrusted to us. What'd you do with it? So we're going to settle up accounts, and he's going to look and go, what did you do with what I gave you? What I entrusted to you? What'd you do? Let's look at Matthew